Hi, everyone. We are here for our next Mental Health Matters video. My name is Katie. I'm the Director of Christian Education at Emmanuel, and this is Shawn. He is a licensed professional counselor who sees people here in Giddings out of our campus here, and we are so thankful to him. In our most recent video, um, you and Pastor Han started a conversation about feelings of guilt and shame and things like that, and it turned to more specifically the example of the what people experience after they've been in an abusive situation. And if you haven't seen that video, I would encourage you to watch that one first because we're not going to rehash everything that was said there. But um, one of the things that came out of it was there are steps to helping someone walk through that after they have been in that kind of situation. First is to help them get to a point where they can separate their own involvement in the situation from the actual abuse or assault that occurred, making sure to help them be clear on the fact that the blame for the assault is always on the person who committed the assault, not on the person who was the victim in that situation. However, there are times when we can avoid putting ourselves in those situations. And we would say that's true of anything that happens to us, right? Not just abuse and assault, but there are tons of situations where we can look back and say like, oh, I could have done something differently to maybe have prevented this. And we know that's certainly not the case 100% of the time when people are abused. Sometimes there was nothing they could do to avoid that. But there are times then, and that's I think when we tend to feel especially guilty is when we have that recognition. And so after you said after we help them separate that out, then we can work on the choices that we make, the decisions that we make, the way that we protect ourselves from those kinds of situations. And as I was watching the video and listening to that, I was thinking about having boundaries and setting boundaries and the purpose of boundaries, which has been a conversation weirdly in lots of areas for me lately, um, including in Bible study, and it all keeps coming back to the existence of boundaries actually gives us a higher level of freedom rather than restriction on life and the way that we get to live. So I'm going to just like lob that non-question out to you there and let you respond.
Well, first, it's an honor to be here again with you and with everybody watching. It's an honor that you're watching. Thank you for being part of this. To answer this, to respond to all that, it sounds like we're starting with the assumption we are separating um, the actual assault and healing from an assault versus how we consider it afterwards, as the healing process is part of that. Um, I think I would have us start with pride versus purpose. So if I am, if I feel like I should be wherever I want, with whomever I want, in whatever situation I want, and I should expect that I am protected and that God has the best for me, um, that's pretty foolish. I'm just going to say it as blunt as possible. That's pretty foolish. When Jesus sent out his 12 disciples to become apostles, he said, "You are going out as sheep among wolves." And then he charged them to be as wise as a serpent and as gentle as a dove. So if we're going out while wise as a serpent, we're being gentle as a dove, and we're a sheep among wolves, do we actually expect the wolves are going to say, "Whoa, step back. That's one of God's sheep"? The answer, everyone, is no. That's not how the world is. We're told to be among people that are good for us and helpful for us. Obviously, no one wants to lock themselves away in a cave and say, "Look, no one's ever tried to harm me personally, physically, mentally, emotionally." Sure, but you're alone. Now we'll look at the purpose side of it. Where does God want you to be? And what one good sign of where God wants you to be is you're among people, that are beneficial for you spiritually and personally. If we do this math, we can come up with 2 plus 2. We can find out that it equals 4 in this case. That when I'm in a situation that isn't healthy for me to be in among people, uh, bad company ruins good morals, right? Old and New Testament says that. So if I'm around those that are beneficial for me spiritually, personally, uh, and I'm keeping away from those others, we're told if people, even if they claim to be a believer, that then live in a way contrary to believer, and the Apostle Paul lists a whole bunch of those very specifically, to have nothing to do with them. And oddly enough, one of the things he says, what's the first thing when somebody says, hey, we should hang out? What's the first idea they have? Do what together? What's the
Grab a drink.
Grab a drink, get a bite to eat, right? And that's exactly where the Apostle Paul goes. He says, do not even eat with these. Obviously, that means drink too. So, so if we're putting ourselves around others that are not healthy for us, then expecting a healthy outcome doesn't really make sense. If we're putting ourselves around people who have our back, people have asked me a lot of times, well, then what is a friend? If they've challenged their friendships and those boundaries, and they said, well, then what's a friend? And I tell them, a friend is a person who has your back whether you like it or not. So what if I don't want them to take care of me in this way? That friend says, too bad. I'm gonna make sure you're taken care of anyhow. That's what a good friend does. And today's society, our friendships are people who say, hey, you do you. It's your truth. You do what makes you feel good. Ask yourselves, folks, has that ever worked in the long run? It doesn't. And I don't mean to laugh about it, but we humans are so silly sometimes in our assumptions that we can just walk off into the desert and be who we want to be, however that is, how we feel and think, and then expect the outcome to be perfectly fine. Instead of saying, now that's pride telling us that it should be that way. Now purpose. That God says, this is who you are, and this is where I want you to be, and this is the purpose you serve, and here's the people that should be around you to help you do that. I would say that that is how we can reassess it.
Sure.
Now, that doesn't mean anything that happens upon us there. Even then, somebody can crash through somebody's window in a Bible study and hurt someone. That's not their fault. It's the attacker's fault. And that's how all assaults are seen, no matter how. Even if you're with somebody that isn't very good for you, somebody then hurting or taking advantage of you is still not your fault.
Right.
But I think in retrospect, in review, in the military, we call it a hot wash and an after action report. Then we would say, but would we have our best friend be in a situation like that? Or would you say, that's not safe? You shouldn't do that to your friend. And so maybe we owe that to ourselves too.
Sure. And so sometimes then, and this is something where I struggle because I don't love to be the person who speaks bluntly all the time. That's uncomfortable for me. I'm learning, and now I'm learning to like back it off a little bit and do it in a kind way. But we live in a culture that we are easily offended by people telling us what we should and shouldn't do, because like you said, we're all about the people that tell us to you do you, live your own truth, whatever, independence, freedom, all these things. And what we actually need is those people, excuse me, proper grammar, are those people in our lives who will tell us and remind us more so of our purpose and who we are as God's children.
And how do they show us that purpose? Through helping us stay within
the boundaries that are set for us. Yeah.
And we hate that. We're human beings. We hate that. Want to do what I want, the way I want, when I want. And that is natural. It is human. And I don't even disagree that we feel that way. I do too. But where will that get you? So it's something that we ought to consider. It's something that we're humans and we fail at repeatedly. When something happens upon us, that's not on us any more than a meteorite falling. So while we're not getting hit by meteorites or no one's jumping through the window of a Bible study to attack us, or taking advantage of a person who's not able to handle themselves at the time. Maybe this is the time when we're not in those situations to say, am I with the people in the situations that are best for me in my purpose, and am I in the boundaries that includes?
Sure, which can be a really difficult thing
Yes, it
for
can.
us to do. Well, I think that's probably a good place for us to stop this morning, or they're going to be watching this video all day. So, thank you, Shawn, for your thoughts, and we'll get Pastor Helm back in here with you to continue that conversation about the ways that we experience guilt and shame in a little bit.
Good to be here. Good to see everybody.